Expats and COVID-19. What do we have to say about that?
Hello, welcome to Frank and Angie's channel of Retire Earlier and Better at Home or Abroad. In this video, we're going to talk about expats abroad in COVID-19 scenario and settings. And we're going to cover a few of the areas that we're very closely familiar to, that are our stomping grounds. And then we're going to talk about some of the other areas that we're in touch with people around the globe and what they're reporting to us of what's happening. People are living abroad, and a lot of people have gone back to the U.S. Travel is resurging in the U.S., local travel. But there's still a lot of expats abroad, and there's still a lot of travel to foreign countries. There's an appearance, a superficial appearance, that things are kind of returning back to normal, but not really. It's like you take 3 steps forward and only 2 back, so you still have that 1 step that remains, you see. And each 3 steps forward, you only take 2 back. So each time this goes on, you're 1 step, you're still 1 step into it. So that's what's actually happening. And so people in Ecuador, let's start with Ecuador. Okay, so we're going to compare a little bit. Okay, so there's a lot of spots around the globe. What we're seeing is that in places where there's a lot more fear, there's a lot more, scary, gotta spray everything down with disinfectant, every car, all the tires, all the ground, you gotta just spray the whole world with disinfectant. That's what's happening in Ecuador. There's a lot of fear there. We've talked about in earlier videos how in Ecuador there's a potential for a real plague in Ecuador, and whether you want to call it COVID or some novel thing is that when there's conditions that are ripe for unsanitary conditions, you're going to have even, I'm not saying the virus isn't real, but you've got a scenario where it hits people that are weak with their health a lot harder. So that's what you've got going on there. But the fear factor in Ecuador, when you look at all of the fear videos, and there's a lot of them, and you see these headlines, running out of caskets, and I'm not trying to minimize people's loss, because death is real and people do lose family members, and our hearts go out to people, and we feel for you, and we're not trying to minimize that. But what I'm saying is that this is a country where 10 years ago, when we first landed there, was running out of plastics for their ID cards. Okay, so there's clearly an inventory management issue, and sure, it could translate from ID cards to anything.
Yeah, our IDs were put on hold because they didn't have the plastics to put around it.
Yeah, so I can see this translating to anything, and clearly it's in the government's interest to create a fear scenario anyway, so they can keep. By the way, Ecuador has said that they're going to be, relaxing, but that they're going to keep, the two steps forward and only 1 step back. So they're going to keep some of the lockdown things, and this is happening in most of the places in the world. So yeah, with the caskets and the dead bodies in the street, some Ecuadorians are saying that the leaders took off to the islands while that was happening. So, you've got to understand that some of these things are just part of how a certain place is run, and how easy it is for authorities to construct scenarios to create more fear. So, to me, running out of caskets, it just gives this impression there's so many dead, but when you do the math on the numbers are not such that would indicate a huge plague. Let's put it that way. Still less than 1% of dead in Ecuador, even though they have those kind of conditions, which, by the way, I'm not picking on Ecuador. Lots of developing countries have similar conditions, and therefore, by the way, a lot of developing countries have a lot of the fear. When you look at the fear in the populace, as measured by how many of these China-style measures they take on, that's how you measure the fear. People want to know, how do we know? Well, the more of these measures they take on, and if you don't know what they are, we made a different video about that about a week or 2 ago. When you see, the more and more of this you see, the more fear you're seeing in the populace, and it usually goes hand in hand with developing countries where there's just an educational issue, where a lot of the information is coming off the television and this kind of thing, and especially when you have pictures of the dead bodies laying around in the street, and this is just, this just sets people's fear factor, really huge fear factor. There are other countries where, again, it's not the similar scenario. It's not the same. It's the fear factor is not quite like that. It's a lot lighter, but yet the figures are similar. So you've got similar figures, but in one place you've got all the population completely trembling and in fear and spraying the atmosphere and everything themselves. They're hurting their immune systems, their own health, breathing in this disinfectant, who knows what's in it. They don't really know or understand. If they understood health, right, they would understand that they're doing themselves more harm by spraying this stuff on everybody, right, even healthy people.
Let's see what's going on in the kitchen.
I can't remember. The vegetables go and then cheese? I haven't made pizza in months. Forgot how to make pizza.
He's making pizza, and that is cheesecake. What kind of cheesecake is it?
Vanilla cinnamon.
Vanilla cinnamon, but it's got a bunch of ricotta in it.
It's ricotta cheesecake.
What do we got going over there? We've got fresh basil, onions, cheese, Parmesan. What kind of cheese is that one? Mushrooms. This is probably provolone. Provolone.
Provolone.
Wow, that is a lot of mushrooms. Well, I can't wait to dive into the homemade cheesecake.
All right, so moving on, another stomping ground of Panama. Somebody asked about Panama. Actually, the numbers on Panama are also very, very low as far as deaths. Deaths to population is less than 0.1%. Clearly, nowhere near any kind of plague kind of number. And yet, Panama has similar or worse restrictions than Ecuador. I mean, Panama has not allowed anybody to leave other than a couple of humanitarian flights that they just now recently allowed. And prior to this, they did not allow any. And they're threatening that if you don't get on those, you may not be able to get out.
Well, 2 of them out of the 3 are sold out.
Oh, they're sold out?
Yes.
I mean, it's been March,
There's 1
April,
left.
May, June, 4 months, and they're threatening to just lock it down again. So everybody that wants to leave, and they sell out. So you may not leave anyway. What kind of government does this to people where there's a less than 0.1% death toll in the population? And, they're blaming the citizens for it, not falling in line and obeying.
They're blaming the citizens for it, for not
them coming down hard, saying, well, it's because you're not doing what we're saying. All right, so blaming the citizens for coming down hard on lockdowns is just, it's just cracking the whip. And, for what? For less than 0.1% of deaths, which is similar to other countries and is not really standing out as any kind of huge plague figure or anything like that. So clearly we can see a cookie cutter style agenda that is rolling out global, which is very sinister. Panama is tropical weather and forcing people to wear masks outside, which has been proven that they do not keep people necessarily from getting sick themselves, for wearing them. In other words, healthy people wearing a mask in 90%, 100% humidity. And so that's pretty harsh. What else? I've just talked to somebody that was trying to leave Australia. They were Australian citizens, and they had to jump through a bunch of hoops, filling out forms and explaining. So this is, explaining why you're leaving. This is insanity. It's not normal. Things are not normal. Things are not going back to normal. And some people have asked, where to go. People are always asking where to go. This is a global issue. You can extrapolate that by the similar measures that are rolling out.
So do you mean she was an Australian citizen trying to leave, and they almost didn't let her leave?
Yeah, she had to go, fill out forms and explain and this kind of thing. So, and that's rolling out. That's in the EU also. It's not acceptable. It's not normal. It's not free. It's not a free country. It's not freedom. And anyone that believes in freedom needs to really think that through.
Okay, there's nobody down there. It's mid-June and there's nobody at the beach.
So then Cambodia, somebody said that in Cambodia it's even stricter, where when people land they have to pay $200. $200 in Cambodia, that's like almost a month's salary for the locals. Clearly a...
$200 for what?
For a test.
Okay.
To get tested. And then they all have to quarantine or something. All right, so in a country like that, $200 a year, I mean, it's clearly some sort of, it's corruption. It's opportunistic fraud is what it is. And so, you know, I mean, it's simple. You can boycott those countries. I mean, you got to understand the power that an expat has with their money in a lot of these developing countries. You're seen as the one that has the money, and you do. So you wield a lot of power with who you do business with. And so if you're trying to, you know, get some business done or a service or product, whatever, and, you know, you see that people are engaging in these kind of, you know, ridiculous measures, you can just say no. You can say, oh, are you going to be wearing a hazmat suit and spraying everything around my house just to come fix my faucet or something? You ask them, you know, and if they say, oh yeah, and then you say, oh, okay, I'm not interested then. You know, like that, passive aggressive. And it's like going into a store, you know, they might have a retail shop, they might have a sign, no mask, no service. You being a foreigner, you know, you're not expected to do everything right. You're just visiting. You walk in and they're gonna, you know, be glad to, a foreigner, you know how these shops are, they're always really happy to see a foreigner walking in because you got the bucks. You walk in, you know, you walk in. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying that I'm making an educational picture here that I'm sure you've already considered, and we're just having a discussion, you know, and this is a method that I've used pre-COVID on many other occasions for other reasons. And, you know, you just, if a person was to walk in and, you know, the proprietor gets really excited to see a foreigner walking in, but then they tell you, hey, you gotta put your mask on, and you say, oh, okay, and then you just walk out. Okay, so this is a form of power that you have, and you can do this. You can do this over and over and over. And don't be shy, because the situation at hand does not lend itself to the simplicity of timidity and shyness. I mean, it's a serious matter, and it needs to be handled in a serious way.
Will you and other White House officials be wearing masks at the rally?
It's a personal choice. I won't be wearing a mask. I can't speak for my colleagues.
And why won't you wear a mask? Is it sort of a personal political statement? Is it because the president would be disappointed in you if you don't wear a mask?
It's a personal decision. I'm tested regularly. I feel that it's safe for me not to be wearing a mask, and I'm in compliance with CDC guidelines, which are recommended but not required.
That's something that you can do, and you know, it will give you an opportunity to make a difference, and it will give you an opportunity to help your fellow man, and it will give you an opportunity for growth as an individual and a person. All right, so somebody asked how to tell which countries are harsh on their people, which ones are not harsh on their people. It isn't something that you have to land there and look around at people. It is as simple as understanding the comparisons we just gave you and the measures that have been implemented. You know, like, you look at the death figures and you look at the population as a percentage, the death figures are pretty darn similar, but even in places where they're a little higher, they're not. For example, let's say they're 1/10 of 1% in Panama or somewhere else, and they're, you know, 3 times that much in Ecuador. They're still well below 1%. The total in Ecuador is still below 1%. This is nowhere near any kind of plague or mass plague or mass, although there is something happening, but it's not at the level that requires the kind of responses that are being implemented. you know, things like travel restrictions, how crazy the percentage of the local people are getting with, you know, with the implementation of germophobic behavior and bubbleitis kind of, you know, mentality where, you know, they think they're just surrounded in this galactic sphere of virus that's just floating and killing everybody. So, you know, the more that you see that mentality, you know, the more you see, you know, these measures. So there's two things. You can look at the numbers and all that, but you also want to look at like the level of fear, the percentage of fear in the people, and then the harshness of the government. How opportunistic is the government? How heavy-handed are they with the people? And so those are all the things. And, you know, really the real difference is, somebody said it, you know, how much pushback is there? How much do people really buy into, you know, this narrative, you know, and how fearful are they and that kind of thing. So it's an interesting subject. It's a good conversation, and I enjoyed having it with you. And thanks for listening. Give it a thumbs up if you like the video, and click the notification bell. Thanks for coming to the channel, and subscribe, and have a good day.